Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Get Uncomfortable, Confronting Anti-Black Racism in Travel and Tourism. I am Shalene Dudley, founder of Latitude Concierge Travels, and I will be moderating tonight's discussion. The first Let's Get Uncomfortable event took place in 2018, an idea born out of the Me Too movement, in the interest of offering travel professionals a safe place to have difficult conversations. At the time, there was a reckoning for bad behavior of men in the workplace, and we thought it important that the travel industry face the realities of inequities and harassment in our own organizations. We are living in another pivotal moment, and the conversations happening right now, led by the Black Lives Matter movement, are all too relevant to travel and tourism. Think about the people we see taking the stage at conferences. Who fills the room at industry events? Think about the images that dominate travel marketing and the voices that are amplified by travel publications, both trade and consumer. Take a look at the executive leadership pages of any of the major travel brands. In these avenues and many more, it's clear how, despite the contributions of Black travelers and travel professionals to the industry, Black voices have long been missing from the conversation. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. But having the option to not see it is indicative of the white privilege that dominates decision-making power in one of the world's largest industries. Simply put, travel and tourism is run by individuals who hardly represent those who keep the wheels turning, let alone the world we are selling. And it's literally just touching the surface of an incredibly deep-rooted systemic problem that pervades all facets of the industry. In our call for anonymous submissions about personal experiences with racism in travel, one person wrote of being denied upgrades at hotels, only to see other people, white or European, get the upgrade they were told was not available. Another spoke of being overlooked when checking into hotels and having hotel employees surprised to see their top-tier status. A travel agent told us how their services are often overlooked in their community, something they can't help but wonder based on their interactions if it's because of the color of their skin. One traveler wrote of having her big curly crochet braided hair patted down, spread apart, and checked going through airport security. Another tells of their hair being randomly touched by other Asian tourists while in Paris. And that's why this conversation is important. Tonight, we will discuss the problematic practices prevalent in travel and tourism as they affect Black travel professionals and Black travelers. We will also share our perspective thoughts on what actions can be taken as we move collectively forward in correcting the broken systems that exist. Depending on time, we hope to have about 15 to 30 minutes at the end for questions, which you can submit via Zoom Q&A. We want to thank everyone who has registered, and a special thanks to those who have made contributions for tickets so panelists can be compensated for the time and energy they're investing in tonight's event. Joining us tonight are Maxine Gundermann, Market Sales Manager, Eastern Ontario at Celebrity Cruises; Margie Jordan, Vice President, True Global Network with CCRA Travel Commerce Network; Kier Matthews, Director of Sales at Classic Vacations; and Tolu Aladejebi, founder of Black in Hospitality. Thank you all for being here. So we're going to begin. Would everyone be willing to share an example of racism you've experienced in travel and tourism? I'll start. I've given a few of these examples in a few other interviews, but the most recent was the constant need for me to prove that my ID was my own. So the specific example is my Platinum American Express. When I use it, even in the expedited traveler line, I've got to give them my passport. Some people have asked me for my license on top of that. The idea that I couldn't possibly hold one is absurd. And unfortunately, we categorize some of these instances because they happen so often as annoyances. Tolu, throwing it over to you. Can you share an experience, please?
Yeah, my experience was kind of similar to yours, not with like, the credit card, but just simply having to provide a secondary ID, or having to, go and print off my, my confirmation letter to make sure that like I was the one that actually booked the stay that I booked. So, having those kind of experiences as you check in, it really does make or break your trip.
Maxine.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me. I've had a lot of these conversations with all of you and my peers, colleagues, friends, and family, And to me, it's important to understand that racism isn't only these blatant acts or attacks against someone based on color, and we need to consider exclusion. You know, just like the old boys clubs was keeping women out of decision-making and leadership roles, exclusion of recommending your friends, if you're, you know, white and you're only recommending the people you know, you're just automatically going to be excluded from that conversation. And another piece of that I certainly, you know, will have to conquer is the lack of privilege. You know, we talk about white privilege, whether we like the term or not. It's the fact that some don't have to prepare mentally and physically for meeting people in person after exclusively working and coordinating via email or telephone. And so when I came into this role, being in field sales, you know, you can see my name, you can hear my voice, but you might not see my face until you invite me out to command a crowd. I'm flying into smaller towns, and you just simply don't know. And it's something that others, and you addressed this earlier, Shalene, you just simply don't have to think about. And it's just that extra step where I can feel out of place and have to make sure that I'm presented in a certain way.
For that, Maxine. Margie, over to you.
You know, there's been a few things I can think of. As you were naming off some of the experiences other people shared, yeah, I can relate to several of those. But I think the thing that happens at the beginning of my trip most often is when I'm standing at the airport and I'm checking in. You know, I skip the self-check-in kiosk and I go straight for the line where the first class passengers are checking in. And there's often someone who will come from behind the counter and walk over to me, just me, the lone Black girl in the line, and say, ma'am, are you in the right line? Or she's questioning whether I have any airline status that I should be standing in that line. She asked nobody else. She just asked me. And quickly tell her I know exactly where I'm supposed to be. But
Right.
It happens more often than not.
Kier.
You know, it's interesting to be the last one because I've, you know, had similar experiences. But here's the flip side to it. I've actually started spending my own money to ensure, and doing a lot of work to ensure I don't have to experience, as Margie said, standing in that line, like making sure that someone greets me on the curb so that they can, you know, if I'm checking luggage, so that they can, you know, take me to the front of the line and I don't have to deal with it. Somebody greet me on the jetway when I'm, you know, coming in internationally, so I don't kind of have to go through customs and kind of deal with some of this stuff. And, you know, to have to gird ourselves and prepare mentally to go to the airport and go to a hotel and check in, like, there's a segment of the population that doesn't even have to do that, right? So, you know, you talk about using your Platinum Amex and you talk about, you know, kind of these experiences. And I have just adopted this attitude that is quite frankly jerk-like when I'm, you know, going through the airport or checking into a hotel, that just essentially say, act like I own the place in order for them to, you know, kind of cut me some slack and leave me alone. But when I act in any way, shape, or form, like I'm not really sure, or I don't, you know, I'm not commanding the space, that's when I get the, are you in the right line? There's no upgrade available for you. Like it's just absolutely fascinating that people don't even have to think about that, but it's real.
It's a different world. It really is. So Tolu, I'm going to jump over to you. What are some examples of the ever-present anti-Black racism in travel and tourism that you see in your space?
You know what? I just find it interesting that I don't see many people that look like me being the face of a particular hotel brand or of an airline, right? So again, it comes to representation, right? And what everybody out there is seeing. So sometimes when I look at ads and I see, you know, a white woman that's just like in this luxurious robe and she has wine, and it's like, you know, why is that space only for white people, right? Like, you know, Black people also travel in luxurious ways, right? We spend lots of money. So why aren't we also the face of those ads and those brands as well? You know, so that's something that for me, I feel is really missing in the industry. It really does lack representation.
Thanks, Tolu. Maxine, your thoughts?
I fully agree. I feel that one of the primary actions that companies, travel agencies can take is in that representation of the brand you're representing, the audience you are putting an image out there of who you would like to see. If all of your brochures are a certain age demographic and a certain race, that's what you are, whether you realize it or not, whether you thought about it or not. We need to actively think to say, no, we want to share a message of inclusion, having same-sex couples in the imagery, having multi-generations and multicultural, and seeing that Black community in there is something that I think is a very easy or first step to take in marketing. And second to that, or additionally to that, is in the companies themselves looking for representation on all the levels. And I've had conversations like this with many of you, is in your own company, in the panel discussions, in the conferences and the trade shows, are we seeing ourselves? Are we seeing equal representation? I mean, just in Canada alone, the diversity that we represent, it's not really being reflected in some of these conferences where, I'd be surprised if I weren't the only Black person in the room. And then, in your company, in the levels, do you see that opportunity of growth and development in your leadership team and being heard that way?
Being the only one in the room is more often than not is the occurrence. Margie, what are your thoughts on the present racism in marketing and representation?
Well, we definitely are not represented in marketing. I won't go over all the details because, we've just kind of talked about that, but I'm going to second the fact that we see very little representation of us in our conferences, in our events, in press trips, in influencer trips. Across the board, we don't see it. To me, it's disheartening that we have to keep asking for it. What frustrates me is the fact that I have to keep asking, and we didn't just start asking because of this movement. We've been asking. I think right now people are just starting to listen, but it's shameful that we have to continue to ask for the same thing over and over and over again. Where are we in the marketing? How come we don't see any Black keynote speakers at these travel conferences that we all attend over and over and over again? We've got fantastic talent sitting right here that could grace a stage any day, and we don't see it. They're not asked. We don't see panelists. We just don't see it. And it's not that we're just starting to ask. We have been asking for a very long time. People are just starting to listen.
Right. And Kier, ending it off with you. Any thoughts on that topic? I think you're muted. Max, can you get him off of mute, please? Did you get the pop-up here?
Perfect.
Thanks, Max.
Not often am I not allowed to talk. Listen, here's the bottom line. Margie and I have known each other for probably 10 years. And this is a conversation that Margie and I, this piece around marketing in particular, have had in the hallways of a lot of conferences and a lot of trade shows. What's fascinating to me, as Margie said, people are starting to listen. But here's the reality. The fact that I didn't even know this many Black people were in the travel industry, whether in the United States or Canada. I mean,
right.
The fact that it's almost as if we've all been in the witness protection program. And now it's like, okay, Black folks can be seen. Here's the thing. I was watching one consortia the other day, sends out a weekly newsletter, and they really haven't handled this particularly well. And and I've communicated that very directly to people in private. And I got last week's newsletter, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know if you call it a newsletter or not. but, you know, where they talked about some advertisements, and, you know, lo and behold, there's a Black woman in the marketing piece. And I'm
Where's she
like,
been?
she, you know, she was, you know, in the ad. And I'm like, you know, I quickly emailed the guy that I know there who's a dear friend and said, you know, nice start, but here's some resources that you really need to do. So, you know, I think I was going to play really, really nice. And Margie helped me realize that, you know, we've got to keep the thumb on folk, because it's not just once in a while or now. You've got to be consistent about it. And we stay at Four Seasons. We stay and do, you know, luxury safaris. We do all this stuff, but we are just never represented in the marketing. So let's see where we get to. But I'm going to keep a thumb firmly planted where it needs to be.
Thank you, Kier. Tolu, let's talk about your career, starting with your time studying tourism and hospitality. What's been the common missing piece?
Again, that's been representation, right? Like coming in to university and college and hearing all these presentations and seeing all these teachers. I didn't have a Black teacher in my hospitality and tourism program. I didn't know of any Black owned hotels. I didn't know of any Black GM. I didn't know of any Black director of operations. I didn't know anyone that was Black that was at the front desk. Right. So, you know, as a young girl that's, you know, looking to enter into this industry, I didn't know where to look for mentorship. You know, even if the goal at the end of the day was for me to become a GM of a hotel, who do I look to for advice on how to get there? Who do I look to give me the guidance I need as I'm entering this industry? There was nobody. Right? Even, you know, the schools, they have so many connections with all the hotels and they're looking for, you know, their co-ops and things like that. When they come to the school, ask them to bring someone that's Black, right? To talk and to say, hey, these are the reasons why you want to work here, because we are diverse, we are inclusive, right? But if you bring only white people, that's all I see. You know, when I go to the job fairs, again, only white people. So, you know, who do I go to even just get basic answers, right? It needs to be somebody that I can relate to, somebody that, you know, understands the struggles that I've been through as a student and now trying to enter into the industry, right? There has to be someone that talks to me through a Black lens. I no longer want to talk to somebody about the experience through a white lens anymore. And that's, you know, that's the struggle that I had in school. It was just representation.
I had the same struggle. It was a different industry. It was design and architecture, but it was the exact same issue. Where do I see myself in the future? I mean, we can always, you know, erase the image of the other person in those brochures and on the advertisements and then put ourselves in it. But that's extra effort that other people don't have to do, right? They can just see themselves on a certain path, and we definitely have to dig a little deeper to make ours happen. Maxine, as a BDM traveling from town to town, workplace to workplace, and also representing your company at trade and consumer shows, what are some of the realities you're faced with your role?
It's a great question. You know, it's like I said, it can be the small things. It's not, especially with allies. There's so many different checklists. Okay, are you an ally, or where do you fall on the spectrum? We're not talking about that aggressive anti-Black. It's more these subtleties, the small comments, and things that might seem harmless. And sometimes, you know, when we share these stories, others will say, oh, you're just being sensitive, or you're, you know, we've all heard that. And so it's not to say we don't want comments or compliments or what might seem like compliments, but one I get all the time. You know, you walk into an office, they don't see you often, and I have lighter features or whatever it is. Everyone's Blackness is different. Everyone's going to have different experiences based on the tone of your skin and the shape of your face and all of that. So one thing I always get commonly is, maybe because you're in the travel industry, they say, oh, where did you just come from? You look so tanned. And I hadn't traveled in months, and I said, well, that's just me.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the small subtleties, and it's not that, you know, we're talking about extreme occurrences or situations, but primarily we are looking for that inclusion, that diversity, the openness. You know, the travel industry in itself is already open and promoting cultures and awareness. And we can just take that a step forward as an industry to ensure that the representation and that equal opportunities, and you were mentioning it, and we've talked about this, is that if we're only, and I say we as the industry, and if it's the primarily white executives are only giving the business or the third-party contractor, the independent agreements to our buddies, to our friends, to people we know in our network, we should be demanding more to get 3 to 4 requests for proposals from a diverse, even if it's the photographer for our photo shoot or the influencers that were mentioned earlier. Be cognizant and be actively promoting that diversity in every sector of the industry.
Thank you, Maxine. Kier, you briefly touched on the challenges that come with being a Black leader and hiring manager in Travel Weekly. Can you share with our audience more thoughts or expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, the premise of that piece about being a hiring manager is if you are a Black leader and you want to hire Black talent, there is this fear once you hire a number of, once you make that one Black hire and then you start looking at other Blacks to hire, it's like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here? Don't lose credibility with your peers. I mean, all of this is said in code, right? And we all know dog whistles. We all know all this stuff, right? Like, so as Black people, we've been kind of dealing with it for a very long time. So there was always this premise that, be careful, because while you want to give Black talent a leg up in those opportunities, your white bosses and or counterparts and or peers tend to go, well, you need to be mindful because, and it's like this secret fear that you're going to turn the company into Chocolate City. And, that's not what it is. It's, there was some research done recently. It talked about when companies made a concerted effort to hire women, they were disproportionately white women. And white women disproportionately hire white women. So what has happened to corporate America in the last 5 years is you've got a significantly disproportionately high number of white women who have hired and promoted white women. And yet, when we should have been focusing on diversity, as in color, race, ethnicity, we didn't do that. So now we've got a lot of women in places, but it's a bunch of white women. So you don't have those Black voices. So the fear as a hiring leader is not losing credibility with your peers because you've got to sit around the table from them day in and day out.
I had a manager who hired me and she was Trinidadian, and she definitely expressed to me that she had to constantly run with my resume when people were asking, well, where did she come from? And it sounded innocent, but she, what experience does she have? It's exhausting. I can only imagine the position that you would be in. Margie, you penned a wonderfully honest piece about the realities of being a Black traveler. Which realities and considerations do you feel should be highlighted or expanded upon in this space?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think we just clearly know that traveling with brown or Black skin is problematic. We know that. We have to be honest about it, number one. I did a little bit of looking and saw that Mandala research said that 15% of Blacks in the US are concerned about where they're going to go for their next vacation in the next 12 months because they're concerned about racial profiling. That's sad. That's sad as a whole. And I do think that the marketing that we see plays into it because we don't see ourselves. I think that marketing for the luxury side particularly plays into the stereotype. I know I've talked a little bit about an experience I had in the Caribbean, probably more often than not, where I'm seen in the halls by other white or European guests and they think I'm the staff. I've been asked to go get taxis, to bring them towels, to do all of that. But when you look at the marketing that's done in the Caribbean, then you will see us as staff. You don't see us as vacationers. So it sort of perpetrates that stereotype, that whole idea that I work there, I don't vacation there. It's not the vacation for me. So when we travel, the things that we see in travel marketing are coming to life for us in ways we don't want them to. We see it all across the board. And it's unfortunate because we have still traveled despite it. There's a huge $63 billion industry of travel that we do as Black people, internationally and domestically. And to not care about that dollar, to put us in marketing, to show us in positive ways is shameful. I have to call it what it is. It's shameful, it's sad, it's inappropriate, and almost disrespectful to Black people.
Margie, I just got to give you one piece of credit, because if anybody ever asks me to bring them a towel, they won't ask for another towel again. I mean, my capacity to verbally shred you when you think I'm the help comes out really fast. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it's real. And I think this is the piece that so many people just miss, you know, to be walking around. January, I was at an event in Toronto in a suit at a luxury hotel. And this guy asked me to get him a taxi. And, you know, the first thing, my response was, you know, hey, I'm not the help. And I just kept on walking. But I think that was really, truly the first time I'd ever been confronted with that situation, in particular in a luxury hotel. My first time.
In Toronto.
In Toronto. 4 seasons.
That doesn't happen here, Kier. What are you talking about?
I'm not fake news.
Good segue to Tolu. For your most recent experience working in Vancouver, can you share your experiences with front of house employment and what your challenges were?
So right off the bat, people are just shocked to see me standing there in the first place. You know, so I mean, when people kind of like come up the escalator and they're looking at the front desk, and sometimes it's just me and another person, and my line is open. I'm ready to receive you. I'm ready to check you in, but you're still kind of looking around to figure out where's the other front desk agent. And it's like, well, it's me, I'm here. So that's like just right out the gate. And people are surprised that I speak English. I don't understand why that's even shocking. Like, oh, like where did you learn how to speak English so well? Or like, how long have you been living here? You know, those kind of things is what I get at the front desk, you know, from a guest perspective. And just, you know, from my colleagues, right? Some of them are shocked that the company's hired a Black girl, right? And a Black girl in management at that, right? So that in itself is a problem, right? Like if my colleagues are shocked that you've hired me, that's a completely different topic and on its own, right? So, you know, I find that having people completely avoid me, that sucks, right? It's like pretty daunting. I'm like, what did I do to you that you would completely avoid me? Or when I see another Black lady coming to the hotel and I'm so amped to see her and she's amped to see me, and we just have this like immediate connection, and then everyone just assumes that we've known each other for 10 years. And I'm like, no, I don't know her. I just am happy to see her, and she's happy to see me, and I'm happy to provide this service for her, because for so many years, nobody has paid attention to us, and nobody has even seen a Black person at the front desk. So we instantly have this connection, and everyone just assumes like, oh, I know that Black person because they're Black. And that's not the case.
You know, you're providing a service, but you're also a safe space, because I've had that feeling when I check in. Like that checklist that we all said we had, I can take 5 things out of it now. This should be a different experience when I check in.
Yeah.
The current wave of the Black Lives Matter movement comes at a time when travel companies have their eye on survival and are bleeding cash because of the impacts of COVID-19. What do you say to those who have not even acknowledged the issues, have not participated in this conversation, and are leaning on the COVID narrative as the reason for this lack of inclusion? Kier, you want to start?
Yeah, fake news. Look, here's the bottom line. If this is the opportunity, if you're trying to stay afloat financially. We get that. Nobody is debating that. But as I've said before, this is the time to kind of stress test some of these ideas and what you want to do. When you talk about recruitment, when you talk about basic pay equity, listen, it doesn't cost a significant amount of money, shouldn't, to provide equal pay to Black folks. So if you've got 5 people doing the same role and one of them is Black, make sure that that Black person is paid the same amount as their white counterparts. That's a simple fix. So when you think about those who are sitting on the sidelines, not saying something because, we're trying to survive financially, this is the time to come up with the plans. This is the time to have the conversations. This is the time to figure out what it is you are actually going to do, and then actually start laying the foundation so that those things can be successful. And if you want to sit on the sidelines, you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. We'll take our $63 billion in travel spend, well, at least my 2018 numbers, and we'll go someplace else. You don't have to come in the sandbox. You don't have to play. The best way to get people's attention is to talk with your wallet, is my thought. So you want to sit on the sidelines. You don't want to acknowledge this. You don't want to engage. Again, do the work now, figure it out, come up with a plan, stress test it, and then implement. Those are very simple.
Thanks, Kier. Maxine, do you want to jump in here?
I must echo Kier's point there that this is something where we should be holding companies accountable, and we hopefully do so in our own lives, what we purchase, what services we're using. And more companies are identifying that their brand should stand for more than just their product. And so when a travel company is highlighting sustainability, environmentally friendly, women's rights, absolutely diversity and anti-Black racism needs to be a part of that conversation. Why there shouldn't, to Kier's fake news is a perfect answer to that, because it goes with the conversation. This is your chance to be better and to do better. And there really shouldn't be an argument to the contrary. So one thing that I would say about any company that's staying silent during this time is sometimes their excuse is more about, well, here's how we feel, and we will share our internal message to our employees, but we aren't necessarily willing to or open to making that a public statement in fear of upsetting a certain audience, or even sometimes the excuse that I won't stand for is that it seemed to be politically dividing. How is that politically dividing? So as employees, as travelers, we need to demand more from these corporations, whether we work for them or are customers of them, to make it clear that we want to support companies that make a holistic view or effort to make the world better. Sustainability, environmental friendly has always been hand in hand with travel. Why isn't diversity, inclusiveness, equality on that same level, on that same platform?
Yeah, the same change management principles should apply, right? Sorry.
Can I just add one thing? It's really interesting because when they talk about environmental impact, they don't even have their stuff together on that. That's the truth, right? Like that's a little bit of loose relationship with the truth around, we're environmentally friendly in this big old whatever that's doing whatever to the environment. So they're not really playing, having a solid relationship with the truth around environmental efforts either.
Well, I won't demonize them, because I know from the inside there are genuine efforts. We can't say that all companies are equal, but from what I can see and the efforts that, the companies I've been involved with, there are genuine efforts. There are companies that do stand for more than just their products, and they want to leave a better place, and I'm honored to represent and work with them. We just need to call out, and Shalene and I have spoken about this before, the ones who are silent. There are the ones we want to make sure it's twofold. There are some that are making statements and they're quite empty, and the next week or the next day they go back to their same thing. But we want to stand out and give a spotlight to those who genuinely want to do better and their actions follow their words. But we need to call out more the ones where you don't see it at all as part of their platform.
You know, and you try to look for it, right? You want to give people a chance. You look at their Instagram, you look at their tweets, you look at brochures, you try to skim through the emails that we're all getting about new promotions, and you still can't find it. I mean, I've had to send out all points bulletins. Someone tell me I missed it. Please tell me I missed it. No, I didn't. And I know who you are. And it's time that we call them out. So moving on to an inclusive workplace, because that's the next step. Like, we need to fix this from the outside and the inside. What does that look like to you, Tolu? What does an inclusive workplace feel like?
You know, that's just being brought to the table and being brought into those rooms that are making these decisions, right? You can't try to change or make an inclusive workplace if you've always been included. So you don't know what it looks like. You need to start bringing, you know, the Black people that work in your organizations into those conversations so that they can help you create and implement what these inclusive and diverse workplaces look like. Like I stated earlier, like, it's no longer appropriate for these things to be happening from a white lens, because they don't understand the struggle and they don't understand exactly what we have to go through. So for me, it's simply bringing us to the table and having us make those decisions now, right? I'm just over, you know, white people making decisions about what the workplace should be like for me. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm the only Black person there, so I should know how I want to be treated when I come into work. I no longer want to have to, you know, go through this checklist of, oh, you know, how should I wear my hair today? Or, oh, maybe I need to, you know, reduce my makeup today, or I shouldn't wear hoop earrings to work. Nobody else has to do those checklists. It's only Black women that have to go through that. So it's simply just opening the door and really having genuine conversations about what these organizations, you know, on executive levels, entry levels, all the managers, what they can do to truly make the workplace safe and inclusive for everybody.
Thanks, Tolu. Margie, your thoughts on that same topic?
So yeah, it gets interesting when you talk about an inclusive workplace. You know, inclusive means all ages, genders, sexual orientations, races, ethnicities. It means all. I can tell you that while I am the sole Black executive at CCRA, there's plenty of other Black people throughout the company, all the way down to our local chapters. There's plenty of them. When we have a national conference we do, and last year when we did it, we had 2 keynote speakers who were Black. We had Coach Murray Garvin, NCAA Coach Murray Garvin. We had Vernice Flygirl Armour, who is, she is the first female combat pilot in the U.S. Armed Forces. When we did it this year, when we say all, it means all. This year we had Jessica Cox, who is the first armless pilot. So diversity covers a lot. It covers a lot. If you're going to do it, you have to do it everywhere you show up. In the workplace, in your marketing, in your conferences, in your events, wherever you show up, I need to see it. I need to see representations of me. I need to see representations of what you want to attract. My frustration with the marketing side of all of this is that people tell me, well, maybe their clientele, Margie, isn't, you know, Black. Maybe it's not. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you're marketing to who you're trying to attract, right? Correct. So you're going after your target. So are you saying to me that as a Black person, I'm not your target? You don't want me as part of your experience, your cruise, your tour, your hotel, your resort, or in your first class cabin or seat on your airline? Is that what you're saying to me? So the message that's being conveyed is a tough one for me to swallow. When we talk about inclusion, I really need for travel brands to think about this a little more. You see me every day. Yet when you go select travel images, when you go put together marketing, when you do videos and mainstream media, you selectively exclude me for someone white. Or what I even feel is almost another slap in the face is you get this ambiguous image where she might be Black, but
sure.
you know, maybe she's not, you know, but she could be anything. Yeah, thanks a lot. Appreciate that.
Action items. What are we going to do? So there have been many travel companies releasing statements about diversity and inclusion over the past few weeks. How do we respond to those statements? Margie, back to you again.
So yeah, when we talk about those statements that everybody's making, I'm happy they're making them. At least we're talking, okay? At least we're talking. But just to make the statement is not enough. So let me just be honest here. It's a simple thing to call up the marketing department and say, hey, I need you to write me a statement about this and issue it. Yeah, that's really simple. But what happens after that statement is issued? What are you doing? Is there anything back there that's backing it up? And I'm not talking about the one image of the Black girl with hair that looks like mine that you put in the last, you know, promo. We can see it. But 10 years from now, 20 years from now, is she still going to be around? Where is she going to be? What are you going to be doing that lets me feel like this is something that you're going to do that's long lasting? So the solidarity statements, great. Love it. But let's move beyond the statement. What's going to be there 10, 20, 30 years from now? Where are we going to be?
Here.
You know, two things really quickly. Number one, I couldn't agree more. And, you know, it's one thing to make a statement, but if you don't educate the folks within your organization around the statement and what it means, you're going to have a big problem. I'm not going to name the company that where the person made this statement, but I heard after the president of a company issued a statement about what the company was going to do and what the company was going to stand for, a white executive said, and I quote, "I have my privilege and I'm keeping it." Now that was in response to Blackout Tuesday, because he didn't know what Blackout Tuesday was. So the president of the organization says, you know, this organization's we're gonna do this, but he didn't bother to explain to his own senior leaders what that actually meant. So the notion that somebody's making a statement and that it's going to be just fine, that's kind of great. You made a statement. It's all about the work. It's really about the work and educating the folks that work for you so that they fully understand what you mean by this to them day to day.
Every day.
Don't you, but can I throw this in there too, that I hear a lot of times that people don't want to say anything or they don't want to make these statements or support it because it's political. And I think, Maxine, you said something to that effect. But look at this. What part of politics is this? You see this brown? I mean, what part of it? Is it Republican or Democrat, or what is it? What makes it political for you? Not to support equity and equality and diversion. What makes that political? I'm not understanding where that comes from. I mean, this is not Blacks against whites at all. What this should be is all of us against racism. That's what it should be. And until we get there, because, you know, we didn't create racism and we're not going to end it alone. So until we get there, until it's all of us against racism, and that means all the people in the back who want to be quiet because they think it's too scary and political, and that means all of us up front who are loud and outspoken about it, all of us need to move in that same direction to ensure that we have a better industry, a better country, and a better life. And if we're not all doing it, then, I mean, what's the point? What is the point if you can't support equality and diversity for everybody? This is not political. This is our lives. I mean, this is our everyday life, things we deal with. It just frustrates me when I hear stuff like that and people are afraid to just be supportive of us, to be supportive, you know me, to be supportive of me. Now, if I'm the next one in the videos that you see, and I'm the next one on the signs they're protesting, and then everybody's, oh, look what happened. But does it take that? Can you just get with the movement right now so we don't have to go there? You know, it's pretty simple to me. It's not political.
Thank you.
Does anybody else want to chime in on that one? No.
Margie and Kier, you both nailed it. Absolutely. Agree.
She's the smart one.
Where's the applause hand? There you go.
No, I got them right here.
So we wanted to talk about fundamental solutions for long-term sustainable change. So I'll come to each of you and I'll start with Maxine. What do you think travel agencies can do in their work to be anti-racist when it comes to working with Black suppliers? And what about in their work with Black travelers?
You know, that's a great question, and it's not even just about working with Black suppliers or Black clients. It's working with everyone. Really, to Margie's point of everyone, you know, it's about being on the right side of humanity, not just on the right side of history. So when we think about what is anti-Black racism, it's not just checking yourself to say I'm not racist. It's actively being a part and speaking up about it all. It's no tolerance for it. So when you think about travel agents' exposure, it's in the day-to-day interactions with prospects, with their clients. You want to actively speak out against anything you hear that is in the wrong. And it's something can be so similar or simple as talking about a destination. How many agents out there have heard a client say, oh, well, I don't really want to go there because what is it? Is it that the locals are too aggressive, or they are selling on the beach, or it's so poor, it's just too sad to see. I've heard it all from, oh, you got to start building new Caribbean islands. All the islands are the same in the Caribbean. I've been there a million times. I'm looking for something different. And we have a responsibility as travel professionals to educate on the uniqueness of all islands, whether it's the travel boards, the media, the travel agencies, the suppliers, the companies, the resorts, more than just the best golf or the best waterfall on the property. It's really showing that travel is an honor, and that a piece of that travel, more than the fly and flop and having some drinks on a beach and being in a warmer climate, is being impressionable about that place. Is there travel or short daily excursions that you can take that will actually help you participate in that place and take a little bit more, and that will leave a lasting impression? So I think it's about listening to your clients and not just saying, okay, well, we will, you know, remove X destination from the talk track because I want the sale. Let's make sure that it's being articulated that that kind of conversation or mentality is not okay when it comes to travel.
And we just got a comment that came through, sorry to jump in, but the other comment agents have said they've heard is, I don't want to go to that property because the locals also go to that property. Like, keep me away from the reality that's outside the walls, right? We've got to really do a better job. Tolu, what are some areas non-Black hotel managers and supervisors can improve, or systems they can adopt to ensure safety, care, and inclusion of Black employees?
Well, first of all, they need to be aware that, you know, racism exists within their property or their organization, right? I find that a lot of the hotel leaders that I've come across aren't even aware that these things are happening, or they just choose to ignore it, kind of like, oh, well, it's not happening to me, so I don't want to talk about it, right? So that needs to change. And overall, the entire culture of, you know, the property or the organization needs to change as well. Like, you need to actively advocate for your Black employees, stand up for them. That, like I say, you know, we can't be having these closed doors conversation anymore, right? Like, oh, okay, oh, what happened? Oh, no, like it's time that we actually speak about this out loud and have people understand that these things are happening and these things are real. And this is what we're going to do as an organization to combat that. You know, and another piece of that is actually just having some training initiatives that are implemented. There's lots of resources out there. There's lots of people that are, you know, having workshops and seminars seminars surrounded around anti-racism, anti-oppression, and they, you know, organizations need to tap into that. Hire these people to come in and train the executive team, the leadership, the management staff, and that way it'll trickle down, right? And I shared this story with you all earlier this week, where, you know, the person that was hiring me, I told her where I was from. I was like, oh, I'm from Nigeria. And she's like, oh yeah, well, I went to Africa, I was robbed. Like, what? Like, why would you even say such a thing? And that's your way. Yeah, like, and that was your way of trying to relate to me, you know, because you've been to Africa. Okay, what part of Africa did you go? Like, Africa's a continent, my friend. It's not a country. And like, you probably don't even remember what happened, or like which part of Africa you were robbed in. So, you know, those kind of things, again, it's about the awareness, right? And just being aware of your surroundings and what's going on, and being aware of the staff that you have working for you. But if you are so blind to those things, that's why you make those kind of comments, because you're just not even there.
Yeah, they're in an uncomfortable position where they now have to acknowledge that they don't know or have had contact with someone like you, and they're trying to relate. And in that relation, they're now pushing you away, right?
Yeah, and
because
you know,
we need to have more experiences with different people so that we do not feel that way.
Exactly. And they just, and I guess, sorry, final piece, like overall, they just need to stop waiting for all the racialized employees to band up together and start this movement. They need to take action first, right? As an organization, as leadership, they need to say, hey, we recognize that this is going on. Okay, guys, let's come together, let's work together and combat this issue.
Right. Thank you, Tolu. Margie, tourism boards are often a consumer's or travel agent's first introduction to a destination. What role do you see them taking on for sustainable change?
Well, I think they need to go back and look at marketing as well. But there are a number of things I think they could do to encourage more Black travelers and to have a bigger presence in this movement particularly. I have a friend who does a cultural heritage and tourism event every year in Fort Lauderdale. She didn't do it this year in particular with COVID-19, but getting support from tourism boards for Black events, the dollar spend with Black events is so small in comparison to other travel events. The amount of time, money, and effort that's put into things when you have Black organizers compared to white organizers is significantly different, significantly different.
Yep.
There's also opportunity for press trips. You bring in influencers and press trips, and we see very little Black representation there as well. There's plenty of opportunity for that. If you think about the research that's out there, in 2010, I think that the Black travel market spent roughly $48 billion in travel. And in 2018, it's jumped to 63 billion. We did that on our own, without inclusion, without representation, without anything. It's an overlooked, underrepresented market that's growing exponentially. It's growing. So tourism boards have an opportunity to do more. You can do it through events. There's magazines like Pathfinders, who is geared toward Black travelers, that you can spend dollars in for advertising and a variety of other things. There's ways. I think you just have to look, open your eyes a little more, have some real conversations about it, and let's just get it done. Really, let's just get it done.
Kier, what practices should the tour operators and wholesalers take?
You know, you talk about marketing. I think marketing is very important, but I also think it's really important that you have folks at every level. I'm the highest ranking Black person at Classic Vacations. There are 3 or 4 other Black people in the company, maybe 5 max. That is a shame. So you want to talk about what we need to do? Yes, there needs to be Black people in marketing, but we need to be in every level of this organization, and we need to make sure of every organization, and we need to make sure that there is a bench that is there so that people can move up and it is not an issue. And, you know, I'm going to say this, and people don't want to acknowledge this or talk about this, but there is a segment of our current leaders who are simply aloof and out of touch with what's going on in the world today. And they have been in some of these roles for so long. I don't begrudge them. It's not about age. It's about their actual capacity to be plugged into what is going on. You know, my 80-year-old uncle teaches me more about my iPhone when the new one comes up or the software gets updated than my 15-year-old does. So it has nothing to do with age. It's about his capacity to engage and stay informed and drive a conversation, right? So there's a lot we can do, but we're gonna have to, at some level, either get new leadership or infuse and surround the existing leadership with some thought leaders that are a little bit different. Because right now, I don't suspect some of these folks completely get it. The guy that said, I have my privilege and I'm keeping it. What is that? And this person is not even 60 years old who made that statement. So we've got a fundamental problem in the industry that we don't really want to talk about. And the reality is, I'm going to say this too. Once you reach a certain level in this industry and the money is really good, and then everybody starts, you know, kind of pampering you. If you look at it, the system is built to pamper those at the top. I mean, why on earth do some people have a fan page? You're not an actress or an actor. You're not an activist. What do you need a fan page for? Like, do the work. So that's a prime example of folks that are out of touch. Yeah. So we got to get some thoughtful, smart leadership that is progressive and forward thinking in order to start fundamentally changing these organizations. That's the piece that needs to occur as well.
That's a really good point. Margie, sorry, I wanted to back up. There was a question, and before I forget it, what was the total dollars or revenue for 2010? I can't remember if it was 48 billion.
It was 48 billion, and in 2018 it's 63. I don't have 2020 numbers, but yeah, it's significant already.
Yeah, it's a huge jump. Sorry, Margie, back to you anyway. Wanted to ask, what messaging should agents send to travelers and travel media to consumer?
You know, over the years, I have spent a lot of time with travel advisors and spent a lot of time just helping them be better, helping them to grow. And one of the things I've consistently seen amongst Black travel advisors will say to me that they don't want to use their own photos of themselves in marketing because they're afraid no one will want to do business with them. And it's sad when you don't want to show your face because somebody's going to look at you and go, oh, that's a Black girl or that's a Black guy. Don't want to do business with them. If you want something to do, be authentic. Just be authentically you. Don't make any apologies for your skin color. We're done doing that. We're done making apologies for it. We're done hiding behind brand logos. We are who we are. And either you want to do business with me or you don't. It's really that simple. And I'm okay if you don't. We'll just leave you over there and leave you be. But for everybody else that's trying to figure out how, especially on the travel advisor side, that's trying to figure out how do I add diversity into my brand? You know, you're not racist. That's not what we're saying. And trust me when I tell you, we don't think everybody who's not Black is. I don't think that at all. I think all of us, even Black people, have biases. We all do. But the reality is we all have to make effort to make our marketing, our message, our brands more inclusive of everybody. So if you're not sure on what that should look like or feel like, then talk to somebody. Show them what you're doing. Show them your marketing pieces. Show them your anything that you're creating, all of your content, and just ask for opinions. Ask me, Margie, do you feel included in what you see me promoting, or does it feel like you're being excluded? I don't want to be offensive here, there. Take a look at this and tell me, you know, how this should feel, how this should look. We're not offended by that. I'd rather you ask me and work with me than to do something that's awkward and weird for both of us, you know? So I think there's a place, and because it does get that way, you know it does. Yes. You see some things and you kind of look at it and you go like, okay, I don't know what they're trying to say, but all right. But there's comes a point in time where we just have to be real with ourselves, and we have to be able to be comfortable in our skin. And I believe that Black people haven't been for a long time. We've been made to feel uncomfortable. We've been made to feel like we're not included, we're excluded from things. You tiptoe around things. And in the same respect, I feel like a lot of our white friends are tiptoeing around us. And I say that because I've had them message me and come behind the scenes and say, oh, I love your post. Thank you for like educating me. I didn't know that. And I appreciate that. But you don't have to tiptoe around me. I'm not explosive. I'm not any of that. I'm passionate, but I'm not any of that. And I will always be 100% light and never dark. I will never exhibit any kinds of signs of weirdness with you. I just need to know where you stand. And I think as travelers, as travel advisors, we need to know where people stand. And with the brands we represent, the brands that we're talking to, the brands that we see out there, we need to know where you stand. Because I kid you not when I say, I am tired of having to come back to the table for this conversation. Let's make this the last time. Let's just fix it, because everybody's tired of the conversation. They're tired, we're tired, everybody's tired. We can fix it. And so we don't have to have this conversation again. It's pretty simple to me. Let's just fix it.
Thank you, Margie. Thank you. Thank you. Maxine, how do we protect employees from backlash if they feel the need to report a coworker or team member? And how do we make the environment safe to speak up and report occurrences?
That's a really great question. You would hope that it's taken seriously. It might not be a question of backlash, but, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, where most of the time when someone comments or calls someone out for a racist comment or action, it's always led with or followed up with, you're being sensitive, you're overreacting, they were just joking, they were saying it in fun. So all I would ask is that it's taken seriously, and it goes back to the, speaking about an unconscious bias. Again, they just, sometimes we don't realize. We're not thinking about it. We do that checklist of, I'm not racist, but there are still certain things that can happen. And so if someone is, and it's not to say that there isn't a fear of backlash. There's people that might not have participated in this kind of forum simply because they were concerned about their image or, what their company would think. And again, it's one of those things where there shouldn't be anything thought other than pride. This is not a political stance. This is just right and wrong. It's inclusion and working with humanity. So when it comes to speaking up and speaking out, I've even seen in the chat box, questions about if you're not in a place of power or leadership or decision maker, how do we speak out? And it really, hopefully, is as simple as speaking out. And they might not hear you the first time, or they might have an excuse, but we're hoping that we're changing the thought process and that they will come around. And I think Tolu said it, or Margie, you said we're not just saying this for the first time now. We've been saying it, and it is going to be a slow progression, and there's certain things that might seem easier or quicker to implement than others. But again, I just believe that it's an unconscious bias. They weren't saying we only want white people in our ads. They were just, whether it was the models that were recommended for the job or the models that came with the cameraman, or, there's so many ways that unconscious bias seeps in. And we need to be active, and everyone should be speaking out. It shouldn't be just me saying, hey, what's our stance on this? It should be everyone saying, what is our stance on this? And hopefully everyone can speak out.
When we talk about speaking out, and thank you for that, Maxine, I don't mean to segue this another direction, but it really triggers in me the process you have at a workplace when there's sexual assault or harassment and that environment. Now, maybe there's not a backlash, but you're ostracized, or now people don't want to joke and commiserate about anything with you anymore because you're too sensitive. And the other piece about reporting, we all know that humans are running human resources, and some people are going to be sensitive or insensitive to what you're reporting. So in my specific experience, I had to go to 4 different people. Like, I really had to advocate for myself until I was heard. And everyone is not in that position, but we need to make environments where that's not the case. That shouldn't happen, right? Like, we shouldn't have to constantly re-trigger ourselves just to be heard. There should be a safe space for it, or not something that's anonymous, but you should know which HR partner is the person I go to for this. If that means that they create another branch of HR, just the same way that now I'm seeing companies have a sexual harassment policy that's mandated, leading into that, Kier, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think that should be an automatic part of training and retraining yearly, the same way we talk about harassment and theft policies in our workplaces?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the very simple solution, right? Because it's a no-brainer. If you're going to train on sexual harassment, you need to train on bias and so on and so forth. With that said, it's interesting because number one, you know, you can ask for permission or you can ask for forgiveness. I'm strongly in the line of asking for forgiveness. And actually, as it relates to this topic, I don't ask for forgiveness. I didn't ask anybody permission to speak or to be on a panel. It is what it is. When you find organizations that want to backlash, it is what my grandmother used to always talk about as a kid. There's godly sorrow and there's worldly sorrow. They want to backlash against you because so the godly sorrow is this: you did something wrong or not so great, and you know it and nobody else knows it, so you're gonna fix it. The worldly sorrow is you did something wrong, everybody sees it, and now you have a lot of regret around it, and you know, you're doing the apology tour. Where I have seen companies, you know, retaliate against folks, whether it's about sexual harassment claims or, you know, how they treat people of color or so on and so forth, it's because they got caught and shamed. And so now they're caught and shamed because we've also been taught, and this is another piece that's never come out, human resources is not really necessarily a function of the employee. It is a function to protect management, right? So if your whole human resources structure is to protect management, that means when Kier comes and complains about the way, you know, someone says, I've got my privilege and I'm keeping it, right? Then the goal is to protect that person and not, you know, Kier's experience. So when you kind of couple all this stuff, put all this stuff together, you got yourself a mess. And nobody really wants to talk about the root cause of the mess. So you're right, we need to have diversity training and inclusion training and talking about, you know, biases, just as we do sexual harassment. But we've got to fundamentally change the structure of human resources.
Yes.
You know, we've got to fundamentally change the structure of recruitment. And the reality is, none of these folks want to look in the mirror and go, holy crap, we got the wrong people in the wrong seats on the bus. We even had this person at our house, at our dinner, you know, their kids go to school with my kids. You know, I can't fire them for being a bigot right now. You know, they've got to feed their family. Well, the reality is, you knew they were a bigot a long time ago. And to fire them now or to do something and fundamentally change the organization is to acknowledge that you have gotten it wrong. So until we fundamentally address the issues, we're going to continue to kind of struggle with some of this stuff. And I think the Me Too movement, what was great about it in that, you know, folks got canceled real quick.
They did.
You know, Matt Lauer didn't get to come back on the air and say, you know, I'm sorry, have a good life. They were like, boy, bye. So we're going to have to start doing some of that in order to get folks to realize that you can't behave the way you've been behaving, for sure. And you know what? People have to get comfortable with people like Margie and I and Tolu and Maxine, because at the end of the day, when we are leading other organizations or leading our current organizations, we're not going to be running around shouting and screaming and calling people bigots all day. But we are going to hold people accountable when they get out of line. And I think if you want change in an organization, you have to be willing to accept that Maxine is going to call you out if you cross a line, whether it's sexually or about her race, or it's about expense reports, whatever, right? Like, she's going to hold you accountable on everything, and you need to be willing to hear that account and be held accountable. Sorry, I went over.
No, that was perfect. So as a major player in change management, we were just talking about HR. HR professionals need to speak up, get involved, and strategically plan to implement support systems. But we understand the flaws there. But Tolu, in your experience, what role did HR play in ensuring safe and equitable workplaces for Black employees, yourself included, and promoting diverse and inclusive hiring practices?
So I think like everybody kind of like already touched on this subject a little bit, and I just kind of want to touch on what Kier was saying in terms of, you know, just changing that HR structure just in general, right? Oftentimes I've gone to HR and I keep hearing the words like, oh, you know, an investigation is going to be done. Oh, you know, we have to wait. You know, it's a 3-strike, you know, policy. And I'm kind of like, well, why is it a 3-strike policy? Like this, like just like we have all those theft policies, like once you steal, it's like non-negotiable, you're out, right? It should be the same thing when it comes to racism. Like if you say anything to me that, you know, has to do with the color of my skin or what I'm saying or anything, and I report that to HR, you should be out the door the next day. I shouldn't have to come to work and have to deal with you again. And I feel that that's a part of, you know, something that HR needs to work on, is really actually taking these concerns seriously. You know, oftentimes I find, HR is trying to cover up a scandal, you know, like, oh no, we don't want this to go out. But you also need to be on the side where you are the organization that protects their employees, no matter what it is, whether it's, you know, entry-level management. And again, like Kier says, HR is there to protect management, but they need to be there to protect everybody, right? It's not just about management only, right? Like we're coming to work and we're faced with all these issues. Why can't I have somebody that I can go to and speak to them about it and they'll be able to take some action? It doesn't even make any sense to me, like why I should have to sit there and come to work again and see the same person that was like, oh, I'm so surprised that you're not late or you're not lazy, because I just assumed Black people will always be that way. Right? Like I shouldn't have to come to work and have to work alongside you anymore after you've said that. Right?
Who is these
so
people,
professional for a Black girl.
Who is
I'm over here having to
woosah.
I'm having to like calm down just after hearing that, you know. I'm like, okay, take deep breaths, Margie, deep breaths.
And it happens all the time. Yeah. and people think we're exaggerating.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, you know, for me, again, HR just needs to make these things a priority. They should be, it's non-negotiable anymore. I shouldn't have to tiptoe around this conversation. Wrong is wrong, right? What you do to one side, you do to the other side, right? So that's just plain and simple. I just feel like HR just needs to do a better job. So, you know, whether like Kier said, whether it's, you know, the fact that we just have the wrong people in those positions, or like you mentioned, Shalene, if we need, you know, subdivisions, like an actual, you know, diversity and inclusion department, or, you know, people who are only focused on sexual harassment or racism, maybe that will change a few things. But until those things happen and the structure, like Kier mentioned, changes, we're going to be stuck in the same place, and we're going to be stuck here for a while. So, but like all of you have been saying, you know, it's time for people to get comfortable with like people on this panel speaking out all the time. And it's true, right? Like I need to be in a position where, you know, if I say something offensive to somebody, that I know that that person is coming for me, right? I shouldn't say something and just sit down at my desk and be comfortable and be like, oh yeah, I said it, so what?
But people are like that.
People are like that.
Move on with your day. I said what I said.
Yeah. So until action starts to happen and people start getting walked off of property and being let go for saying things that are offensive or behaving in ways that are inappropriate, we're going to have this conversation again 6 months from now.
And you can always start with your middle finger. That's always a good point of direction. That's free, Tolu.
When all else fails, Kier, right? When all else fails.
I love the
So I think that's probably Kier's final thought, but I will go back to the rest of you. Tolu, you just spoke so Maxine.
Over here.
Yeah, you're gonna mute you and turn off your screen. Maxine, any final thoughts? Anything we touched on that you wanted to expand on? Anything we missed? Anything you want to leave everyone with?
I just love the interaction in the chat. It's been so positive, you know, just in the generality of us having this conversation. But just recently, someone, you know, said, where Tolu, you shouldn't have to be the one or the only one reporting this to HR and going to HR. And they make a perfect point that I've been, you know, communicating with my friends, is that anyone who was in earshot of that should be speaking up. The day of silence, of inaction, you know, staying neutral. There is no such thing as neutral in this conversation. So my mom and I were, you know, discussing something we saw where a famous singer was in a general shop where the shop owner said, don't touch things, you know, to her and her father. And it became a scene, not violent in any way, but, you know, she stood her ground and said, why can't I touch things? Like, I'm going to buy things in your shop. And other shoppers were hearing this and observing this. And they actually left the store because they were uncomfortable. They didn't stand for it, but they simply left. And the shop owner even thought, well, they're leaving because you're causing a scene. And so instead of leaving, people should stand up and articulate, we won't shop in this store because we cannot support this behavior. And that goes in our industry and any industry in our daily lives, that silence, inaction, neutrality, which doesn't exist, is not okay. And to everyone be able to speak up.
Thank you so much, Maxine. Margie,
well,
final thought.
I'm just saying it, the same thing everybody else is saying. No is not the right answer anymore. We're done here. No. Inaction, done paying attention to that too. There's no opportunity, like Maxine said, to be neutral in this situation. You're either with us or you're not with us. It's really that simple. What did Maya Angelou say? When you know better, do better. Get it done. Just get it done.
Here. You're allowed.
You're gonna let me
Yes,
have a final word after I told people to use the middle finger. Here, at the end of the day is this. The expectation for us to improve and to be better tomorrow than we are today is only going to increase. And the conversation and the dialogue won't go away. Tolu's not going away. Margie's not going away. Shalene, you're not going away. Maxine's not going away. And all of these people on this call is not going away. So at the end of the day, I hope, as I do every single day, I wake up and try to make a decision and make the decision some days to be better that day than I was the previous day. We don't have to fix everything overnight. We just got to move. We just got to act. And if we can do that, if we look back on, you know, what we've done 15 years from now, our children or our grandchildren will be very proud of the things that we've done. And with 2 daughters, that's the way I want to be. I want them to be proud of what I contributed to this conversation around this topic, because I think it's now a part of my life work.
Thank you, Kier. Tolu.
You know, for me, I just want everyone to normalize seeing a panel like this, you know, and not just, you know, a panel, but, you know, in leadership, you know, on all of the, like, the brand, hotel brands, marketing, online. Like I said, it just so happened that all of a sudden, everyone has come out of the woodworks, right? Like, people are like, things that I didn't even know existed just started popping up. And we should have been known about these Black-owned hotels, these Black leaders in hospitality and tourism. So it needs to be normal. People just need to get used to seeing our faces. And I'm so sick and tired of people having this like, oh, you're the manager? Like, I like, no, like, I'm tired of seeing that. And so I just want everybody to just come together and fix these issues. Just like Margie's been saying, it's really simple. It's all of us against racism. And if you're not on the, you know, all of us, then you're on the racism side, and we don't want any parts of that. So it's time for you to choose a side and make your allyship known.
Yeah. Thank you. You know, I just wanted to end with a quote that I found, you know, a few months ago and used at the end of my interview with Travel Courier. It's from Mark Twain. Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime. I mean, we all need to get out there. I mean, everybody on this panel seems to be the type of people who can move themselves in spaces that don't make them 100% comfortable, but there's 100 million other people outside of this call that we need to help push to get to that space, right? That's the charge all of us should have. Let's help a neighbor or a friend get there. I wanted to thank you all for all of this. We have some questions and we have time, which is great. So I'm gonna start with one that was sent in previous. So this person is referring to an earlier experience shared in their intro about airport security. So that women don't feel violated as she did, what hairstyles are deemed suspicious enough to call for frisking? Is that stated anywhere?
No, it's not.
No, it's not. But
It's not stated.
definitely braids.
Afros?
Yeah.
Afros, weaves, anything big means they're up in here doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, anything
Yep.
big.
Margie, even your hair is not big, and I've had mine twisted like that, and still it was like, what could possibly be?
Yes.
Why? Why does there
Anything.
have to be something in my hair?
Because a 357 can fit in your hair.
Yeah, it can.
I've literally had somebody come up and take their hands and like do this all up in my head. It's insane. I mean, yeah.
I mean,
Insane.
we know there isn't, well, I wasn't gonna say I know. There isn't, that doesn't exist. I'm gonna leave it. Okay, next question. How do we have a different positive response of saying, I'm not the help when someone says or assumes that you're the help? The one where Black people just say, I'm not. Do we have a better comeback for that?
You can just ignore them. You don't need to engage. Just keep walking.
Yeah,
you know,
in those spaces, I'm not in the space to educate you and tell you
Right.
who I am, and I shouldn't have to tell you who I am.
Yeah, you just
It's
you can
just
walk.
move along. We don't. Why
It
cause
depends on-
an uproar? Or it's just not. It's not worth it.
It depends on my mood in the moment.
Yes.
Generally, I'm an easygoing girl. You know, I'm on vacation just like you, and I'm trying to enjoy my trip just like you. And 9 times out of 10, I'll just say, you know, I don't work here, and they look kind of stunned, like, no, really, I don't work here, and keep moving. But there's that every now and then moment where somebody just needs a little more than I don't work here. You just got to judge it by the moment. But for the most part, yeah, just tell them you don't work here and keep it moving.
So can I just get a do-over? I mean, I'm not running around saying that to people all the time. Let's not, you know, characterize it that way. There are times and places and moments. I get tired, I get frustrated, I get irritated, I get annoyed like everybody else on this call. And sometimes, whether it's my 15-year-old daughter or my 80-year-old uncle and everybody in between, sometimes you just snap at people. You just have a moment. And my default when I'm tired and stressed and, you know, on the road every 5 minutes and somebody wants to ask me that, that's what they're gonna get. Most often than not, I just go, I don't work here. I don't want people thinking I'm just running around shouting at people and ranting, you know, like a madman.
And using your middle finger.
Using my middle finger.
Angry Black man on property. Watch out. I think we kind of answered this, but I'll go back to it. How do we have this uncomfortable conversation and talk about race relations with our white colleagues? A lot of our white colleagues are either silent, scared to speak up, or they're on the other side of the spectrum and being absolutely not empathetic and completely negative.
So I just want to say one thing. The email that went out to white people that said, call all your Black friends and check on them or text them, you guys can ignore that. everybody has come out of the woodworks, and you know, people who I overtly know that does not like me and sending me text messages. Like, look, if you want to have a conversation and you're genuine about it, call me, but don't call me to debate with me and argue with me. Because if you want to know the truth, I'm going to share my truth, and that's it. So if you want to debate, go somewhere else. But, you know, peace be still.
I'm going to second that, what Kier said, because I think that there's what I've learned, I think, from just commenting and sharing. I've tried to use my Facebook page to educate a little bit, because what I'm seeing is that a lot of my white friends, travel advisors, people I know, are popping in and saying, I had no idea, Margie. I didn't know till you told us. I didn't know anything about it. And they're not so sure how to ask, or if they even need to ask, or just didn't know. And I know there's a lot of Black people will say, well, it's not our job to educate them. I get it. But on these topics where everything is super sensitive right now, where emotions are kind of flaring, and you know, we see literally in the media, one side yelling at the other, you know, I need to find a place where I can have a conversation with somebody and have it intelligently. And Kier said it right. I'm willing to have that conversation with you intelligently. And I'm even okay if you disagree with me, and we can part, you know, ways and disagree. But what I'm not going to let you do is back me into some corner or make me feel like I'm crazy about my experience. And I'm not going to let you question my experience either. Now, that's where you're going to get what Kier said, the middle finger and a whole bunch of other things. We can talk like adults. We can do that. But when you want to go left, I'm going to go all the way left. Okay. So if you want to have a conversation with me, I'm open to that, whoever it is, for whatever purpose. And if we, you know, we end up agreeing to disagree, or walk away from the table and you don't agree and I don't agree, I'm good with that. Just understand that my experience is my experience.
Discounting that doesn't help.
To the point of, you know, in the question where it says they're non-empathetic and they have a negative idea, whether it's they're just completely unaware. They don't see a problem because they're unaware it exists. You can't even begin to fix it. So more to how do you address those white colleagues who, you know, it really is sharing your experience or sharing other experiences or exposure to those experiences. If you can have that educated conversation and they still, you know, are one to say racism doesn't exist. And to define it the way I was saying earlier, it's not just the blatant acts. It's the systemic. It's the underlying tones. It's the unconscious piece of it. I think if you really break it down to say it's not just you see, you know, someone and you don't like them, then we can have that educated conversation. So I think we need to ask the right questions to see what level are they on. She even identified that there is a spectrum. Where do you sit on this? Because obviously the one end of the zero, I don't even know if they should be employed. But then if you can find, are they a 1, a 2, a 3, are they more a 5 or a 6, you can start that conversation once you understand what they don't understand.
Great. Yep. Next question for the panel. I love this conversation, but as someone who is not in a leadership or decision-making position, how can we best advocate to our leadership team that they need to implement these changes to be more inclusive with our marketing and internal processes? You just want to bite on that one?
I think you just have to, like Maxine was saying, is the fact that you just have to say something. You know, I wasn't always in leadership or in management, but I made sure that I always let them know when I didn't feel included or when I felt like, you know, training things need to be changed or whatever the case may be. And for, you know, when you work in hotels, if you have like your exit interviews or when you have your employee engagement surveys, those are ways that you can express that, you know, there needs to be new training initiatives being implemented. You know, those are ways that you can also say, and the employee engagement surveys are anonymous. So if you are a little bit nervous about you know, putting a name behind the statement that you made, that would be the perfect place for you to go ahead and talk about, you know, some new training initiatives that need to be implemented to make the workplace more diverse and more inclusive.
Thanks, Tolu. Anyone else on that one? We have a few more. The next one is, thank you so much for inviting me into this conversation. Do you have any specific speakers or educators or trainings in the travel industry that you could recommend? We need to enhance the educational offerings for our team, ensuring we have an inclusive work environment. We don't have a human resources department, only 30 agents in total.
Margie's a good person to present.
There we go, Margie. Here's some more to this question. Well, more comments, which are really good. All the educational offerings for ICs in our company have been voluntary effort, primarily by this person asking the question, who is a white woman. I've reached out to a few team members that have interest in making a difference to start brainstorming on diversity and inclusion. I would love our Black team members' input, but I also don't want them to feel like it's their job to educate the rest of the team. Can you share your ideas and opinions on this?
So I would just have a conversation with them. Everybody feels differently. I can't say that all Black people want to educate. I can't say all of them don't. Everybody has a different way, a different thought, a different idea about it. You just need to start the conversation. You need to figure out how much they want to be involved and how much they don't. And I guess the thing that you need to understand is, for some people right now, this is pretty hurtful. It's all pretty volatile. It's hurtful. There's all sorts of inflammatory things being shared and talked about. And it gets to a point of being painful, and you don't know what their experiences have been. So if you can at least start the conversation and figure out where they are, figure out how much they want to participate. I've said it before that it's tough to talk about change for Black people when you're not involving Black people. You can't have a conversation about us without us. That makes no sense at all. So
it sounds like she understands that. So she just needs to maneuver and figure out, you know, how to not upset anyone.
Yeah, it just opened the door and have the conversation. Start there.
As long as it's being posted, it's being articulated to everyone that this is an opportunity, this is a committee that is being, you know, held, and it's an opt-in, because it, just to your point, it would be a disservice to try to tackle this without the input of those who might feel marginalized or uncomfortable, you know, in the current environment. So you won't, again, if you don't know what the problem is, how are you going to fix it? So you're going to get new information, but yes, to Shalene's point, the question is it okay to ask the Black people, you know, to participate without it feeling mandatory or pointing them out? But I think it would be appreciated by most.
It's a great sentiment, and it's great that there's people out there trying to figure their way through this, right? I think that's what we want.
That's awesome.
This one is more of a comment. As a white male, I am really enjoying this conversation and am learning from it. I have always worked with Black folks and they are friends. As a nurse, 50% of my patients were Black and 50% white. I can certainly empathize with you, and I want to see anti-Black racism disappear. But in reality, I've experienced anti-white racism from Blacks. I really think Margie and Maxine are being objective and looking at the problem realistically, also referring to what Maxine said regarding some people saying they don't want to go to a resort because there are too many locals. Is it because they, I assume she meant white tourists, have experienced anti-white racism from the Blacks in some of these locations? I know when a Black person showed me that they disliked me because of the color of my white skin, it was very, very uncomfortable. So I can certainly understand how Black people feel. Let's see. There's some in here that didn't make the questions, but I can see them. So how can I, as a white travel advisor, promote more diverse travel experiences to my white clients?
So are you doing any marketing that includes Black people or other diversity in your marketing? Are you promoting any cultural tours in those locations? Like there are Black heritage tours in Paris. There's all sorts of opportunities out there. Are you promoting any of those sorts of things, or the first couple of things that come to mind?
Good question. I mean, even though there's a very, very, very small pool of marketing out there, some of it is good. I mean, still far and few between. But when you have a choice of what to use, try to mix it up. Like, it doesn't have to always be the blonde lady with her nice fedora coming out of the limo with her butler. I mean, there's all these other pictures, there's all these other experiences. And you know what, in my opinion, when I can't find what I want, I've used photos with nobody in it, and I'd rather do that. Even if the other photo is better, I'm tired of having to use the other photo. Like, a photo in composition is better. Like, I don't want people to feel like the way I feel, where I have to insert myself, and it's like this effort to do so. It should be okay and welcome.
That question is very similar to another comment and question I saw in the chat here, that I think, I don't know if Tolu with your brand can assist. It was, and I think actually, Shalene, you actually asked or read this question, but one piece was, do you have any specific speakers, educators, or in the travel industry to recommend? So maybe we can compile, even just from ourselves on this panel, different speakers. I know, Margie, you were speaking about a lot of different people you've had at your conferences, and marketing ads or companies, and different Black-owned companies. I know, Tolu, that's a special project you want to be continuing. So something maybe for the participants as we, afterwards, to follow up, that we can make that accessible.
Makes sense. Margie's definitely the first person I'd put on that list.
Thank you.
I think, was that all of them? Did I miss one? Oh, here's one, sorry. How can brands and people in power and with privilege engage their workplace in the movement without triggering and re-traumatizing their Black peers by putting the burden on them to educate their white peers?
That's a good question.
I have this saying, you know, when it comes to, actually, it's not my saying. A friend told me, you know, GTS, Google that stuff. If you want to find out something, you don't want to necessarily re-traumatize me or take me through something. You know, there's a lot of really great resources out there that can help folks navigate and understand the experience, right? And quite frankly, I'm still learning about the things that I really need to know. And I went on a journey myself to figure those things out. So we all, you know, can easily do the research to figure out, you know, how long is a flight from Los Angeles to Paris. You know, do the same research to figure out what you need to know, because the resources have been there for years. You know, I just read this book, you know, a year and a half ago called Dying of Whiteness. And it's about how, whatever the case may be, but it's research that I figured out and did on my own. So you don't have to re-traumatize me and ask your Black peers what's going on and what they need, what you need to know. You can actually do the research yourself and have your own journey of discovery, because that's the safest place. And then if you need a point of reference, that's when you go to people and say, help me fully understand this if you don't understand something.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel like, you know, a lot of people need to do the internal work first before, you know, coming and asking, you know, their Black friends or their Black colleagues for help, right? It's at the end of the day, it's about us coming together to tackle racism as a whole, right? But if you haven't done the internal work and haven't figured out how you yourself have contributed to that, then, you know, what's the point of kind of coming to me and asking me for help when you haven't really acknowledged or done the work within yourself? So I feel like I agree with Kier, where it's like, well, you also need to do the internal work first. And then when you come to me, then we can work together to figure out in what ways we can tackle, you know, the issues of racism.
Or what realistic holes were missed, like in your exact situation. Like, okay, so now I need your personal experience. This is what I've started with. Where do we go from here?
Right.
So there's a question that's not on here that someone had asked me before we got on here, and I know this is touchy, but we saw some interesting comments from a very prominent person, depending on how you look at it, over the last few days in the travel industry. And it caused a lot of waves. It definitely pulled back a lot of sheets, and I meant that as I said it, from comments from other colleagues. How are each of you handling that? Like when someone has exposed themselves as being completely dismissive and not willing to even hear about your experiences, what are you doing? Are you canceling them? Because I am. I don't have any space for this right now.
I missed this. Did I miss something?
Did you miss it? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm feeling like maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't name names here, but
yeah, I'm not naming the name here. Most people know who we're talking about. I mean, if it's in the chat, that's a whole other thing, but I'm not naming any names. In general, people like that exist. What are you personally doing when those people reveal themselves to you? Because this is a struggle some people are having. Am I canceling all these people that are quote unquote my colleagues, or am I maneuvering around them?
This is the beauty of this whole pandemic, right? Is that it has shown everybody who everyone really is. And like they say, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And you know what? I'm at the age where honestly I don't have time for that, right? Like we're just all about like positivity, and we just want to keep it moving. So if you have some issues, then that's on you. So I'm with you, Shalene. I'm canceling people left, right, and center, really.
You have I don't know. I mean, we all take things differently, right? Like you can take it personally down to heart, and I don't ever fault anybody for fighting back and commenting and going at it. You know what? I pay more attention to what else is happening in that conversation and make my list and check it twice. That's what I'm doing right now. We don't need to bring in more negative energy in our spaces unless you are in that space to fight it. Like, what are you going to change?
Yes, I
so
know.
I'm gonna throw this out. You know who we're talking about here?
Yes.
So let me just say this. What I won't do is spend my time, energy, and effort dealing with somebody who clearly has his own mind, heart, and opinions. You keep those, buddy. You stay right over there with them. My efforts are focused on creating change. I don't have time. I don't have the energy. And quite frankly, I don't care, because your opinion doesn't change my reality. It's not going to improve my reality, nor is it going to make it any worse. So you keep all your negative comments and all your crazy ideas and all of the stuff you want to do over there. You can talk about it. You can do, everybody has freedom of speech. You can say what you want to say. But I don't have the time to give to that individual or any other one for some nonsense. I have a goal here. I mean, we've been talking about this so much over so long. I mean, I feel like my whole life has been enshrouded around just trying to be equal. And I'm tired, y'all. I'm tired. I am so tired. And I don't have time to help somebody else understand why this is problematic in America or any other country. I don't have time to help him understand that. So where I'm at right now, and what I'm saying to people right now is, I want to do what I can do, and I want to make the change I can change. What I can do is ensure that people with racist attitudes and viewpoints aren't in a public office, are teaching our kids, are leaders of organizations. That I can do something about. I can make some steps to make sure that the leaders who are in our various countries and organizations aren't racist, because when you make racist policies or you are leading a company and you have racist views, then it's problematic for me. It's problematic. So my efforts have to be focused on things that make sense. And that little rant that we all saw,
oh, it went on. It went on. Yeah, he was really trying to be relevant. And I'm like, you
cancel it.
Just ignore him. He's really sitting in a lonely place right now. I mean, obviously people agree with him, but clearly he's reaching out because he wants
attention. He wants attention.
This is the person that used to own a publishing organization and sold it.
There you go.
So the funny thing about this is, I don't really pay attention to a lot of news. Like, I mean, the only news I get is news alerts from TMZ because there's so much crazy going on in the world. I really don't want to hear what anybody is doing. So if you want to know who died, give me a call because I probably know before most people because TMZ have not gotten it wrong. I said that to say this. I inadvertently scrolled through my phone and ended up on the phone with this person. Like I went to call somebody else whose name was, I didn't even know that this had gone down. Well, he said something kind of inappropriate. And I'm pretty sure I called him a, dumb jackass and hung up on him. And then, so I haven't seen this post, but I do know he's trying to remain relevant. And I think when you give people a platform and you engage them, they're getting exactly what they want. So those are the people you unfriend. I mean, I've unfriended a lot of people who I thought were really good friends in high school who are like, some of the stuff they're saying. So it's not that I'm canceling them. I'm just canceling them out of my life.
Yeah.
And I ended up on the phone with a bucket of crazy and didn't even realize that he had said all this. So now I got to go find this shit. This is good.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if anybody else decides to step up on that same pedestal. But we'll see. So that was all the questions. There's been tons of thank yous and, people saying they felt like they, learned so much and they want to take from this and, reach out to others around them. I really want to thank all of you for doing this. Like Maxine briefly, directed towards, there were some people who couldn't because they couldn't, and not that they didn't want to. And it hurt my heart that we are still in that position. But I'm glad that we could, take up this fight for them and use our voices and amplify the voices for the people that couldn't be here. I want to thank Terry and Annie. I know that they're hiding somewhere in the background, but Terry and Annie have been a great support through all of this effort and the one before that I was with them on. I absolutely adore them. They're going to get sick of me because I'm keeping them on my WhatsApp. In my venting space. Max, thank you for your contribution here, and thank you for this space. Tolu, Maxine, Margie, and Kier, I love you. Thank you so much for being here. I hope we can continue this another time. We're not ending this here. We will, obviously be looking for other people to provide some input, but now that the traction is here, we need to keep going. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us on Let's Get Uncomfortable.
Thanks for having us. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.